Hello, my name is Erin Sylvester Philpot. I work in the Center for Leadership and Social Change, and today I'm going to give you a brief overview of the FSU ServScript program. Our deadline to log hours for this semester is quickly approaching, and so I just wanted to give a little bit of information that might help you learn some tips and tricks in order to successfully submit your ServScript hours before this semester's deadline. So I'm going to share our presentation here. So as I said, the FSU ServScript program lives in the Center for Leadership and Social Change. And in the Center for Leadership and Social Change, we do a variety of different programs and experiences for students that are based in either leadership development, identity exploration, or engaging in service within our Tallahassee and surrounding communities. So here's just a short video that you can watch that kind of highlights some of the different programs that you might recognize or know the Center for Leadership and Social Change for. So the ServScript program is one of many programs that we coordinate and host for students. But ServScript is a way that FSU students can log their community service hours or ways that they've been giving back to the community on their official FSU transcript. So this started back in the late 90s as a way for FSU to really value and to track the ways that we knew our students were making major impacts in the surrounding community. So FSU values that service so much that we allow students to list it on their transcript right along with their academic requirements and experiences. So when you go out and search for a job, apply to graduate schools or to programs that happen after your graduation, you're not only showing that what you've learned in the classroom, but you're also showing the ways in which you've helped to change the world and grow in experiences outside of the classroom. So in order for things to count on your ServScript, they need to be unpaid. If you're receiving payment, that is a job, that's not service. They cannot be court ordered or court sanctioned. And that also counts if you were sanctioned by FSU as part of a penalization or a consequence from something. They need to benefit the community and solve a community need or a social problem. And then you need to have a third party listed that can verify that that service that you've done was completed and is accurate as far as numbers and the ways in which it helped and counted as service. So that third party can't be you. It needs to be somebody that is ideally not related to you. So a parent, sibling would not count. And that really a good way to think about that is someone at the agency, the nonprofit agency that you're working with, who helps you to coordinate or facilitate this service, or the direct person who benefited from the service that you're completing. Once you list your service hours in ServScript, which each student is responsible for doing themselves, a little bit later on in today's training, I'll show you exactly how to log into the MyFSU portal and log those hours. But once you have listed those hours, our staff at the Center for Leadership and Social Change reviews those hours at the end of every semester, and once approved, they will show at the bottom of your FSU transcript as being verified service hours. And so in this bottom right-hand corner here, you can see the way that it will look. It won't have all the details that you enter into the ServScript system. You're going to be asked to submit a reflection there and provide that third-party contact who can verify those hours for us. But on your transcript, it's just going to show as the agency that that you did your service with, the service task that you were completing, whether that being note-taking or mentoring or cleaning, or being a classroom volunteer maybe, and then the number of hours that you logged with that agency and the cumulative hours you logged each semester. So what counts as service? Things that you might do on campus to benefit Florida State University can count as service, but don't necessarily. So if you have questions about that, you can always go to this link here on our website. There's a full list of the things that qualify as service and a number of the things that we've decided throughout the years don't qualify as service, but that we get asked pretty frequently. So check out that list to see if your service qualifies. But some common things that people don't necessarily think about as service that do count is advocacy for a specific cause or for social change, organizing a donation drive. So maybe we've just experienced a hurricane here in Florida and you want to organize a donation drive of items or food or water in order to help people that have been impacted by that storm. Organizing that drive does count. Donating to that drive does not count, and we'll get to that on the next slide. Similarly, fundraising for a nonprofit or for an advocacy group, for research or for medical advancements, that act of fundraising counts, but actually being the one to make a donation does not count as service. And then finally, directing, creating films, documentaries that bring attention or bring light to a social cause, that can absolutely count as service. We see that as an advocacy and kind of activism realm of service. And then research. So many of our students participate in undergraduate research and often have a hard time thinking about things that are happening in a lab or in a scientific setting, or maybe even archival research or social science research as being service. But if it is resulting in directly improving the lives of others or solving an issue, that can absolutely count as service. Things that typically do not count as service are going to be things that benefit your individual family or benefit you. And so you might want to help tutor younger sibling for their homework. You might help your parent or an older family member do some chores around the house. We view that as just being a good kid, being a good student, being a good daughter, son, or family member, and would not be something that counts as service. If you are working for a for-profit organization, a political campaign, or if you're doing something in the name of a specific religious groups, those things that are very tied to our unique individual beliefs and opinions often don't count as service, because we find it hard for folks to balance that line between wanting to help others without changing their minds or forcing them to believe and view the world the way that you do, right? And so for things to count as service, we need you to think about helping people regardless of their political affiliations, regardless of their religious or spiritual views, and simply because they are in need. So often we get asked if you can do service through a church, religious house of worship, or faith-based group. You can do service with those groups, absolutely, but we don't add those groups as agencies within ServScript, and that is one, because we are working to separate church and state as a public institution in the state of Florida. But secondly, that is because we want to ensure that service with those organizations can be as a group, but isn't to the benefit or furtherance of those organizations, right? Like we mentioned previously, donating items or donating money does not count as service. We don't ever want for those in the world that have great privilege or great benefits to be able to do more service than others. And so we remove that money and donation of items from that realm. Travel to and from a service location also does not count as service unless that travel is spent in either training and education preparing for your service or reflecting on your service experience upon your return, right? So we host a lot of different programs and trips here in the Center for Leadership and Social Change where we do have to travel a great distance in order to do service. And while that might count as part of our time that we spend with our colleagues and with our friends on campus in order to go do that service, the act of actually traveling itself is not service, right? As soon as we get there, then we can start logging our hours. Holding a leadership position in a specific student organization, that falls very firmly in the realm of leadership. And while leadership and service are absolutely intertwined, we don't count actually holding that position as service. Similarly, court-ordered or mandated or sanctioned things are not counting as service. And then scorekeeping at FSU sporting events. We have a lot of undergraduate students that contribute to the success of university programs in this way. But we feel like you're getting a whole lot of personal benefit out of that form of activity. And so we don't see it as something that is specifically service. You get the benefit of sitting courtside at a Division I institution game. That's pretty cool for us. And in some way, you're already getting some great benefit. So doesn't count as service hours. Any chance we get, we like to separate the distinction between service and philanthropy for folks. So a good way to think about this is that we view service as something that is actively participating in directly benefiting the needs of others or the needs of a community. Philanthropy is usually the donation of funds or the fundraising of funds in order to do that benefit, right? And so both are still necessary, both are still inherently good, but it's important just to separate. If you are simply donating money or are funding something, that falls more into the philanthropy realm and wouldn't be something that we ask for you to log in ServScript, but absolutely is something that you should log on your e-portfolio or add to your resume as a necessary and good effort. So how do you find ServScript exactly? Each student is responsible for logging their service hours into their own service record. And the reason that we make sure that every student must log it themselves is because you should have some control over what appears on your transcript. So we often get asked by students that are in a leadership role, maybe they're the community service coordinator or the service chair of an organization, and they ask us how they can log hours and give credit to their peers who participated in an organization's service activities. That student that's in that position can absolutely be serving as your third-party contact to verify your service hours, but we want to make sure that you as an individual student log your own hours so that you have some control over what things show on your transcript, what story you want to tell about the service that you're doing, right? So you would go onto your MyFSU portal, log in through the typical way with your typical username and password, and then scroll all the way down to the bottom right-hand corner where you'll see ServScript application underneath the student services header. And once you click that ServScript application, you might be asked to log in again just to make sure that you're authenticating who you are. And then it will take you to our ServScript platform. So I'm going to try to show you exactly what that looks like here. So here you can see we've logged into the MyFSU platform. We're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom where we'll find ServScript application. We'll click it. And this is exactly what our ServScript platform looks like. So you've got a couple of different areas where you can click here to add a new entry, maybe a new form of service that you've just started participating in, or it's just the first time this semester that you've decided to log your hours. If for some reason you've been logging hours as you go, that's a great way to make sure that you don't lose track of things. You can review all of your current entries and you can update or edit those entries so that as you do more service, you're updating existing entries, which helps keep your transcript looking a little cleaner. So if you're going to the same agency twice a month or every single week, it would start to get a little excessive if you logged one entry every time you went and did service and you're doing something weekly, right? That'll take up a lot of space on your transcript. It's a lot of pages that you have to print and mail to someone. So we allow you to update existing entries so you can just extend the date range and add more hours to one line of service within your ServScript. And we consider that to be absolutely correct, right? So you can go in and update something all semester long and really just have one line of service entry per agency or per service task if you're doing multiple tasks at one agency. At any point in time, you can review all of your approved hours that are in the ServScript system that have already been reviewed by our staff, approved, and therefore should be showing on your service transcript or on your FSU transcript. And then this FAQ button here takes you to some helpful resources on the Center for Leadership and Social Change's website. There's a step-by-step guide. There's some screenshots. There's a way that you can request to have your agency added or your student org added. Tons of helpful tools on the center.fsu.edu. But for now, let's say that we are coming here to add a new entry for the first time. So we'll click here. You will always know that you are in your service profile because your FSU card photo will show up. Glad that I actually have logged in here to my own account. That is my FSU card photo that you're looking at. And then underneath that photo, you'll see the total number of hours that you have approved on your transcript. So when I was an FSU undergraduate, I logged 483 hours during my time as a student. What you can also tell is that right underneath that are the current hours that you've logged for the current semester. So for this spring 2020, I am slacking majorly and I have logged 0 hours. And so I'm not waiting on anything to be approved. I know exactly kind of where my balances are there on this home screen. Up here at the top, there's a section where you can check to see if your service or the service that you're doing qualifies and should be entered on ServScript. There's also step-by-step instructions that I mentioned before that have helpful screenshots and how-to guides to walk you through exactly what I'm about to do now. And then in order for you to log your service, you have to have that service belonging to or connected with an agency. And so many agencies are already logged in ServScript. We have over 2,000 that are already reviewed and approved and entered. But if you are doing service maybe back home or you've traveled to do service with a group, your agency might not already be known to us. And so you can check our database to see if your agency is already listed. And if it's not, I'll show you in a couple of slides how you can submit a request for us to review and add your agency to the database. It takes a week or two, and we will notify you as soon as we've added it so that you can go in and update any existing entries or add any entries that you've been holding out until you get that agency added. So you'll always want to select a start date. We'll say that we started service yesterday, and an end date. We'll say we also ended yesterday. You can enter the number of hours that you have served in increments of a quarter hour. And so we allow you to make the decision of if you're rounding up or down on that, but you can get pretty fine-tuned here of exactly how many hours you have logged, right? This is where we require you to enter an agency, and in order to find your agency, you're going to click that hourglass, and you'll notice it defaults to you searching with a begins with. So if I'm going to look for the Red Cross, and I type in red, you'll notice that it says that there were no matching values. And so you might be thinking, oh, they don't have the Red Cross in the agency listing, so I'm going to submit a request to add the Red Cross. Well, a helpful trick is if you click this advanced lookup button here, and instead of searching on begins with, if you search contains and then click lookup, you'll find that by broadening that search criteria, you are able to find that we have the Red Cross listed as the American Red Cross. And so I can select that that is my agency that I did my service at. If you continue to go back to the same agency over and over again, you can kind of commit this agency number to memory. So as you go back frequently, you don't have to keep going through that hourglass to magnifying glass to find your agency. You can just kind of always know, oh, I typically do American Red Cross, that's agency number 8. Or I know that I'm going to go to Camp Boggy Creek, and that's agency number 361. And that way, every time that you log in, it's just a little bit faster for you. We also ask that you enter a service task, and that tells us what you were doing when you were doing your service. Our task for service task list is much shorter than our agency list. We've tried to keep it clean and organized for folks. And so you can just scroll through to try to find exactly what you were doing, or pick something that's as close as you can possibly get, right? So at the American Red Cross, I was helping them to organize some of their training materials. And so I don't see on here specifically organizing training materials, but I can say that we were training in a classroom, and so maybe that's a classroom volunteer, right? Or some of their training materials are around health and CPR certifications, and so maybe that's health education. I feel pretty good about that one, so I'm going to pick health education. You'll need to list the full name and title and either phone number or email of your agency supervisor. And so this should be somebody that either worked with you when you did this service at the agency, or maybe is a volunteer coordinator or your point of contact at that agency. And the reason we ask for you to list this is because when we go and check service hours at the end of every semester to make sure that things are accurate and authenticated, sometimes we will randomly select groups of students to audit. And we will contact these agency supervisors just to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to check the information that you're entering. So we would contact whoever you list here. We'd say, hey, do you know this student named Erin? It says that she did almost 3 hours on April the 21st, 2020. And they would hopefully say, yes, we love working with Erin. She's a great volunteer. If you scroll down in this section, you have the opportunity to say that you are serving these hours with a student organization or group. You'll notice that it automatically defaults to not serving hours with a student org or group. That's because we want you to feel empowered to go and do service on your own whenever you see a need in the community or whenever you feel called to do that. You don't have to associate service with an organization in order for it to qualify as service. But if you want to pick a student organization, same thing, you can use this magnifying tool and you can search for any organization that you'd like, right? So maybe I want to look for the Center for Leadership and Social Change. Again, when I look it up, just looking at the center, it appears as though there's nothing there. So I'm going to click this advanced lookup, search for contains, and look up center this way. And I'm still not finding it, but I feel like I maybe just need to get a little more creative and see if maybe it's under there as leadership. What about social? Or maybe change. So the Center for Leadership and Social Change doesn't appear to be an organization listed in our database. And as I'm thinking through that, that's because the Center for Leadership and Social Change isn't a student organization. It's an office. It's a department on our campus. And so anytime that you can't find something in the system, it's important to really stop and think about, well, why wouldn't I find it? Is it just because it's not in there? Or is it because I'm listing either an agency where an org should be, or an org where an agency should be, or maybe some combination of both, right? So if I were doing this through a student organization that I was a part of when I was a student was Dance Marathon. And so maybe I can search dance. And there, not only do I find Dance Marathon at Florida State, but I also find all sorts of other student organizations that I could choose from, right? I didn't do this service through Dance Marathon, so I'm not gonna put this. I'm gonna push cancel, and that doesn't list a student organization for me. Same thing in this next section. If you'd like to associate your service hours through an academic course, maybe you're in a service learning course, or part of your requirements from your professor is that you do some service, you can always click this button and choose to enter a course code, that prefix, and the numbers, right? And so that might be SOW 4132, or it's EDH 3661. And you can just enter that there, and then it will show up as being tied to a specific course. And maybe that's how you want for your FSU transcript or service transcript to look. Again, not required. Then finally, the last thing that we encourage you to do before clicking submit is to answer these 2 questions. And so in the Center for Leadership and Social Change, we believe that part of learning is reflecting on the things that we do. I'm making meaning of, why did we do that? Why did it matter? How would I maybe do it differently next time? And so we have 2 questions here. One, how did you benefit or grow from this service? And the second one is, how did the community benefit or grow from your contribution that you made? We do read these. We do take these into account whenever we're reviewing your service. So we really encourage you not to just type in gibberish there. That will not help us to approve your hours. Really take a moment to sit and think about the answers to these questions. And then when you're done, you can click submit. I'm not going to click submit because this is just for training demonstration purposes, and I do not want to be inauthentic or inaccurate on my service transcript. Let me come back to sharing our PowerPoint now. Okay, so we talked through all the different things that you can do in the ServScript platform. There's tons of different options and opportunities. If for some reason you have questions that you can't find there, please do not hesitate to reach out and ask us at the Center for Leadership and Social Change. We're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. When we get to the very last slide in our presentation, ServScript has an email address that you're welcome to contact 24 hours a day. And we have folks that take turns checking that to be able to get you a quick response. So if you have questions or if you get into the program, into ServScript and you can't quite find what you're looking for, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. When you are logging your service hours, it's important to remember that every semester has its own deadline. Just to help folks remember and to keep things nice and clean, those deadlines are always the final minute of the final hour of the final day of every semester. So this training is being recorded in spring 2020. And so right now our deadline is May 1st at 11:59 p.m. And that's always in Eastern Standard Time because Florida State's campus is located in Eastern Time. So even if you were to travel outside of that Eastern Time zone, don't forget, has to be Eastern Standard Time, 11:59 p.m., final day of the semester. You can log service hours 365 days a year. So even though our deadlines fall at the end of every semester, the very next day after something closes, you have the ability to log hours for the next semester. So like I said, this is in spring 2020. Our deadline closes on May 1st. But on May 2nd at 12:01 a.m., you can begin logging hours for the summer term. Even though our summer term doesn't technically start for another week after that, you can log hours 365 days a year. This starts to get a little tricky when we go from summer C, the final summer session, into the fall term. So we have a lot of students that will do service in those last couple of weeks of the summer semester. And then they feel like they can't log it because the fall hasn't started yet. Well, even though we haven't started fall classes yet, anytime at the moment that the summer C term ends, which I think this year is going to be on July 31st, August 1st, you can begin logging hours for the fall term to get a couple of bonus weeks in there. Here are some frequently asked questions that we get. When is the deadline is probably the most common question because I know we have a tendency as humans to just focus on the date, but think about the final minute of the final day of the semester, and that is always going to be the ServScript deadline. You can log hours all the way up until the final moment. What happens if you miss the deadline? So sometimes we're so focused on final exams and all of the life transitions that usually occur during the end of a term that we just forget to log our service hours, and that is okay. Unfortunately, we are not able to go back in time and add those hours because this is an official university document. So it's important that we never go back in time and change things. But if you forget, staff at the Center for Leadership and Social Change are more than happy to schedule a time to sit down with you and help you craft the things that you would have put onto your ServScript and add them to your resume or add them to your ePortfolio so that we can make sure that you're still including them as part of your experience and as part of the things that you've done while at Florida State. Do internships count as service? The answer to this is largely, it depends. So if you're doing an internship at a nonprofit organization, or if you're doing an internship that is benefiting the community in some way, and you're not getting paid for that internship, it probably counts as service. Doing an internship at a for-profit location or in the office of a family member might not count as service. It might though. And so feel free to reach out to our office and we can help talk through what type of work are you doing? Are you receiving payment for that work? And in what way do you feel as though it helps benefit the community? And that can really help us to answer if it's service or not and if it would qualify. Some other questions we get asked is, when will my approved hours post on my transcript? So even though you logged them on by the last minute of the last day of the semester, we then have to have some time in our office to review those hours to truly authenticate that they are accurate. And so it usually takes us 1 to 2 weeks to be able to go through everyone's service hours. And then we add another week to make sure that we can hit some bumps or hit some delays, and then still be able to work with our colleagues in the registrar's office to be able to post all of the hours to student transcripts. And so we say that it takes between 2 and 4 weeks at the end of every term before you'll see your approved hours listed on your FSU transcript. If we are 4 weeks into that next academic term and you still don't see your hours, absolutely contact us. We want to make sure that they were logged appropriately, there weren't any computer or technology errors, and we are more than happy to acknowledge if we are experiencing delays on our end, and we keep you posted on about how close we are or when you might be able to expect them. What happens if you're selected for an audit? So earlier I mentioned that once the deadline passes and we start reviewing service hours, we conduct what we call an audit, very similar to other processes like the IRS. We couldn't possibly review everyone that submits a service transcript every single semester. So we randomly select students and student records. We use a random number generator. We tried our best to make sure that folks are being selected with no leaning towards organizations or where you did your service or the number of hours you did. We really want it to be random. And we're just going to look at your ServScript entries. Most of the time, if you've listed a good contact to confirm those hours and you've listed things in your 2 reflection questions that we can tell absolutely coincide with the agency, the type of service, the nature of the work that you're doing, you may never know that you've gotten audited. But if for some reason there's a discrepancy or things aren't quite adding up, a member of our staff is going to contact you via email, and we're going to explain that you've been randomly selected for an audit, and we're going to explain to you exactly what problem we see or what discrepancy we're trying to work out. And we're going to ask you to help us answer that problem, right? So to provide additional documentation, maybe we haven't been able to get in touch with your third party contact at the agency and you want to provide us with a new name, a new person to contact. All of those things are the things that we hope that you'll exchange back and forth with us in a timely manner. When we contact you, we're going to give you 2 weeks, but the faster you can get back to us, the faster we can get it posted to your transcript. If for some reason those 2 weeks go by and we don't hear from you or you're not able to provide us with any of the information we need in order to feel confident about approving those hours, we will deny that service entry. We do it entry by entry, so we're not going to just blanketly deny your entire service record for that semester. It just might be one entry that doesn't get approved and the rest of them do. But if for some reason you believe that your hours are denied in error or that we made a poor decision or you have new information that you want to put forward, you can always appeal that decision. So you have a right to an appeal for up to 1 semester following the term in which you did your service hours. So if you did service hours in the fall of 2019, you can appeal those hours being denied up until the end of the spring 2020 term. So 1 full semester that you can appeal. In order to find an appeal, the form to submit an appeal, you'll go to the Center for Leadership and Social Change website. At the very top, you'll find a service tab, and that will show you all the different programs and activities that the center hosts that are related to service. And then on the left-hand side, you'll be able to navigate to the ServScript section. And in that section, there's an additional resources tab. And on that additional resources tab, you'll see these 2 buttons. One is make an appeal to an audit, and that's where you'll submit all of the different information or rationale or things that you would like for us to reconsider. And that then will go to a member of our staff that was not involved in the initial decision. We want a new hearing body for you. So a new staff member who's going to then review that appeal to consider all the different options, to consider all the information that you provided to us, maybe reach out to a new contact. And then once we've made that decision, a member of our staff will then contact you to tell you the final decision. If for some reason that decision is overturned, you should be able to see those hours post on your transcript with that term's hours. So if it's appealed in the spring of 2020, when our spring 2020 hours hit your transcript, you'll see an update to your fall 19 hours if the appeal was approved. If the appeal is not approved, then you'll see no change in your record because the final decision is what stands. Also on that same section is where you can find a link to submit a request to add your agency or your RSO. So we try our best to keep our agency and our RSO databases updated frequently. We're constantly kind of scrolling through Null Central to find new RSOs that are being created. But if we happen to miss yours, submit a request for us to add it. We want to make sure that if you want your service to be connected to your RSO, that you get a chance to do that. So you submit that request. It takes 1 to 2 weeks for us to process. Like I mentioned previously, we will absolutely contact you once it's been added, so that you can go in and update your record, or that you can add service hours that you've been holding on to wait for those things to be added. The deadline to submit an agency or RSO request is always 1 week prior to the deadline for ServScript. And that's to ensure that our staff has enough time to add the hours and then contact you, and then you have enough time to add your hours before the ServScript deadline, right? So it wouldn't feel super fair if we were accepting agency and RSO requests all the way up until the deadline, and then we're staying up in the middle of the night trying to add things, trying to contact agencies just to get things added into the system. So we have a 1 week deadline prior to that. So for this spring 2020 term, ServScript deadline is Friday, May 1st. The deadline to submit an agency or RSO request is Friday, April 24th. Should you have any questions that weren't answered in this training, you can always email the ServScript email account. That's servscript@admin.fsu.edu. Like I said, we check that Monday through Friday and respond as quickly as we can. Once we're no longer in a remote work environment, once we have all returned back to campus together, you're welcome to drop in to the Dunlap Success Center. The Center for Leadership and Social Change is located on the first floor, and you're welcome to stop in anytime during business hours and we can answer your questions in person. If you'd like us to walk through ServScript together with you and kind of give you an in-person tutorial, we're happy to do that as well. And then finally, if you're looking for service opportunities or ways to get more involved in center programs, check out our website, follow us on social media. We are always coming up with creative new ways to engage our students, and we hope that you will join us in some of those efforts and those initiatives. I hope that you've enjoyed this training. I hope that it answers any questions that you might have had about FSU's ServScript program. Don't forget, the deadline to log your hours is always the final minute of the final day of every semester. Thank you.